We are Southeastern 16, and we're going to talk some Oklahoma football today. Kind of take a look into what the postseason could look like for the Oklahoma Sooners football team. And to do that, we go to our friend Tyler McComas with the ref out in Oklahoma. Tyler, great to talk to you again. How's things out in Sooner country?
It's a fascinating question that I could go on for about 25, 30 minutes for, because football season was not great this year. Basketball so far in league play, hasn't necessarily been great. It's overall good, but I think there's a lot of people that are very upset, certainly by the bowl game, how the SEC went this year. It is a massive year for Oklahoma football, Oklahoma athletics coming up in 2025. Just to put it shortly and not go on for 30 minutes like I could,
Yeah.
it's a big year coming up, especially for the football program.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to go. Obviously, this is not how any Oklahoma fan would have wanted the season to go. Thought the season would go. Tough loss in the bowl game. What's just the vibe around the program right now from the fan base, from those close to the program? Just overall, what's kind of the vibe around the Oklahoma Sooners at this point in early January?
Brent Venables, is he the guy? Is he not the guy? I think it's probably, I don't even know if it's split anymore. I think even the people that just desperately want this to work are really concerned about it actually working out this year, because I think we all know the situation. He's on a hot seat. I've said it a few times before. It's still weird to say it out loud, Chase. This is the first time since 1998 a head coach at Oklahoma has been on the hot seat, because Bob Stoops was never on the hot seat.
Yeah.
Lincoln Riley was never on the hot seat. Brent Venables, not until now, has been on the hot seat. Heck, less than a year ago, he got an extension from the university, right? So this is the first time since 98. You haven't fired a football coach since 1998, and we could be less than a year away from that being the case. So I think the vibe right now is just very, very nervous, not super optimistic at this point. And looking at next year's schedule, for as much talk as last year's schedule was so difficult, next year's schedule might even be more difficult, especially when you add Michigan in the non-conference and what they did to close out their final two games, wins over Ohio State and Alabama. It's just it's a very weird time right now, because normally, at this time in the offseason, you're talking about winning a conference championship, winning a national championship. That's been the norm around here for a long time. And I think the hope is to get to 8 or 9 wins, so you're not looking for a new head football coach this coming December.
And I do want to get into some of the personnel that's come in via the portal, staff additions, and all that. But to you, what are some things that need to happen in the offseason to turn this thing around to where we're not having a conversation in December of where Oklahoma is looking for a new head coach? What are some things that need to happen?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's like the thing, like the only thing, but the biggest thing, Chase, they've got to be better on offense. They've got to be more efficient. They can't have so many awful turnovers and nickel and dime penalties. I mean, really, they got to be the exact opposite of everything that they were this past season, because the defense was good last year. And I think the defense looks even better this past year if the offense isn't consistently putting them in terrible situations, game in and game out, like time of possession, or defense comes up with the turnover, they got the momentum, and the offense gives the ball right back. I mean, that happened countless times last year. So by the numbers, the defense was good a year ago, but it could have been a lot better if they just had an average offense, not just one that made mistake after mistake. And I think that they're going to be good defensively again next year. I really believe that. I think they got a chance to have one of the better defensive lines in all of the SEC. You lose Danny Stutzman, which is a big loss. You lose Billy Bowman. But I still think, again, on all three levels of the defense, I'm not saying today it's going to be the best defense in the SEC, but does it have a chance to be as good as the defense was last year at Oklahoma? Absolutely. And that defense can win you a lot of games. The question is, how much better are they going to be better offensively next year? Now, I learned this year the hard way to never challenge worse, because just when I thought, well, it can't get worse from this, buddy, it continually got worse as the season wore on, man. So, but I do think that the offense will be better this year because you got Ben Arbuckle. I think he's a real young, up-and-coming offensive coordinator that's going to bring an identity to this program offensively, which they desperately need and didn't have that last year. And I think you have a dude at quarterback, man. And John Mateer, not only the best quarterback in the portal, but you look at several services out there, they say that he's just the best overall player in the portal. So if you got to do it at quarterback, man, like I know the game is changed. It's gone to 3 different. If you got to do it at quarterback, you're going to have a chance every single week. Now, I don't know if John Mateer is going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC next year, but he had a really good year last year. I think there's a lot of things to be excited about with him. He's going to have some help at wide receiver. He's going to have a better offensive line. There's no doubt. The tight end position was a disaster last year, and unfortunately, I'm not super optimistic it's going to be all that much better this year. You got a much better OC, and you got a much better quarterback, and if we're going to talk about OU being better offensively, if nothing else, just those two things I think will help that out pretty dramatically.
Yeah, for those who may not have kept up with John Mateer at Washington State, all that, like what does he bring as a quarterback? What is he bringing to Norman, Oklahoma?
Yeah, I mean, I think the word gunslinger gets thrown around maybe way too much these days, but he is a guy that he's aggressive with the football, man. Threw a lot of touchdowns last year. Did a very good job of not throwing very many interceptions. I think it was the final number 6 interceptions for John Mateer last year. But he's a dual threat guy. He's a guy that led Washington State in rushing, had a lot of rushing touchdowns. He's a guy that I think that you're going to be able to spread guys out. He's going to be able to throw the ball around, and he's going to be able to make plays with his feet as well. I would not project him as OU's leading rusher next year like he was at Washington State, but I think that he's a true dual-threat quarterback. I don't think that he's Kyler Murray out there running around. Very few people that have ever played football have looked like Kyler Murray running around, but he is definitely capable, whether it's some design runs or – the play breaks down and he's either able to get 8 to 10 yards himself, or if he's just able to get outside the pocket and extend the play. I even hesitate to bring up this comparison because this guy was so great here. And of course he won a Heisman Trophy and he's going to be playing the playoffs this weekend. But the comparison that everyone likes to make is Baker Mayfield. Kid from the state of Texas who was extremely overlooked when it came to recruiting out of high school. John Mateer, I think, was a 2-star coming out of Little Elm in Texas. Goes to a school, blows up, has a great year, getting all this attention, comes in with the real chip on his shoulder. Like I think that there are similarities to the story with John Mateer as there were Baker Mayfield. I'm not going to predict that he's Baker Mayfield coming in for Oklahoma or anything like that, but it just kind of seems like they're both guys that teams rally around. John Mateer's got that chip on his shoulder, and he's making a lot of money from Oklahoma this year, and he's done some things now in college football, but he still carries that chip, kind of like Baker Mayfield did while he was at Oklahoma. So I think I'm really excited about him. I talk about where I think that he could fall into kind of the SEC quarterback tiers next year. And I think top 5, he could definitely be one of those guys if all the things fall right. But he's going to be a guy that makes plays with his arm. He's going to be a guy that makes plays with his feet. And specifically for Oklahoma, I think he's their dude offensively. And they needed that because, when we talk about leadership, I don't know who that guy was for Oklahoma last year. Frankly, Chase, I don't think that they had that guy. I think not only do you get a good player at quarterback, you get a guy from day one. He steps through the doors and says, I know this offense. I've been running this offense. This is my offense. I'm that dude. Let's go. And OU really needs that voice and needs that face of the offense at this point. So it was a big deal. It was a big get for multiple reasons. You had to get him, man. You just had to.
Yeah, and Ben Arbuckle, offensive coordinator, very familiar with John Mateer. They've worked together. How important is that relationship going to be? And what do you see stylistic maybe changing for Oklahoma with Arbuckle leading the offense?
Well, instead of giving my opinion on how important that is, I'll give you a better opinion. Bob Stoops, who comes on our show once a week, and I asked him that. I said, not always, but it feels like the majority of the time when you hire a new offensive coordinator, he's coming by himself. And here's my system. I'm the only one that really knows it, and the rest of you got to learn it. The quarterback, the O-line, the wide receivers, everyone else. Well, I asked Bob, I said, well, what's the advantage of, okay, well, the offensive coordinator is clearly coming in, but the quarterback is also coming along with him, and the quarterback coach at Washington State last year is also coming with him. So you got three guys that know the offense, including the quarterback, and he's like, yeah, I mean, that's a big deal in a lot of ways. It gives you a real head start. So I think that that's an advantage for Oklahoma. And again, what is a massive year for Brent Venables, what's a massive year for this program, they really got to hit the ground running this year. And I think it's a big advantage for them that the quarterback, and then there's another guy, the quarterback's coach coming from Washington State, that knows this offense inside and out. How might it look different next year? Man, well, if they're able to throw the deep ball a little bit more and push the ball down the field just a little bit, it's going to be a significant upgrade to what it was last year. I don't think it's going to be true air raid in a sense, because I do think Oklahoma is definitely going to be involved running the football. But I think that you're going to see them be more aggressive in the pass game, which they weren't last year because, frankly, they weren't able to. And I'm hoping to see a more downhill, physical type of run game. Because Xavier Robinson, a true freshman, came on late last year. Javonte Barnes had, compared to everyone else, a pretty good year offensively a year ago. I think that you could see maybe a more physical dimension to the run game, but also a passing game that is extremely aggressive and an offense that operates in a very fast manner, man.
On the defensive side of the ball, you mentioned like the defense is shaping up. They could be good in 2025 like they were this year. A change on that side of the ball and coaching as well. Zach Alley going back with his old boss, Rich Rod, to West Virginia, which opens up a hole in the defensive coordinator spot. What does the defense look like as far as the coaching staff goes? I know that's Brent Venables' side of the ball. He's a great defensive mind. Will he do more of that? Is he going to find somebody to replace him, a bigger name? What's that side of the ball look like as far as coaches go?
So you and I are talking on Thursday morning, and it's been 12 days since Zach Alley left for West Virginia. 12 days for a coordinator hire in college football, like a SEC program, seems like an eternity, right? And as you and I are talking, and maybe something breaks while we're talking, and I look like an idiot here, but it doesn't seem to be a lot of urgency at this point. And not that to say that they're not addressing it or they're not looking at it or they don't know what they want to do. I think that they know what they want to do. It just doesn't feel like the offensive coordinator hire with Ben Arbuckle. Like that was a lot of urgency. We got to get a guy in. We got to get a guy quick. It's not a whole lot of urgency right now. And I don't think that this thing's going to last another month or anything like that. I mean, they just got two really good portal players this week without having a official defensive coordinator. But to your question, what's going to happen? Well, I think that there's multiple things that can happen. Zach Alley was your linebackers coach. I think that there's absolutely a possibility that OU could either hire a linebackers coach from outside the program or just elevate someone from within. And, hey, you slap a co-DC title on another assistant, but we all know what it is. Brent Venables he's calling the shots. In a year where his job is on the line and he's one of the most successful defensive coordinators we've seen in college football in the past 30, 40 years, hey, man, it's his defense. He's calling the show. No one's confused as to whose defense that is. I think that is very much on the table. I think Wes Goodwin is definitely a name that's a possibility, who just got let go at Clemson, who actually replaced Brent after Brent left Clemson to go to Oklahoma. He's a name, probably the name that we've been throwing around the most as a possibility that he comes in and runs Brent's system. But there's also a fascinating name that has emerged over the course of the past few days. And that name is a defensive coordinator who is currently coaching in the college football playoff. Actually for Ohio State, of all teams, Jim Knowles. Now, Jim Knowles was at Oklahoma State a few years back and had a really good defense in his final year in Stillwater. I guess he just got engaged this football season, and his fiance lives in Oklahoma, and I can't guarantee you at all that if OU really offers the guy that he's going to leave Ohio State, who might win the national championship, and come to Oklahoma where the coach is on the hot seat right now, right? But there has been some talk the past couple of days that, hey, man, OU is big game hunting here, and Jim Knowles could be a guy. Now, maybe that's hard for some people to believe that OU would have any sort of a chance at getting the Ohio State coordinator when you look at everything. But I can buy in at this point that OU is big game hunting because, like I said, there's just not a whole lot of urgency at this point. It's been 12 days. Wes Goodwin's been available. You haven't hired him yet. Brent Venables, you haven't just announced that he's going to be his defense. So I would definitely, whether they get Jim Knowles or not, or some other big candidate that we might name here in the next couple of days, I can believe that Oklahoma's kind of standing by saying, hey, if we want a big name, we're willing to wait for a big name. Because if nothing else, Brent Venables is the face of this defense already. And when it comes to portal recruiting or just recruiting overall, Brent can obviously be the face of that while we go out and wait for a big name to see if we can get a defensive coordinator.
And before we let you go, Tyler, I just want to get your thoughts on the portal in Oklahoma. We mentioned John Mateer, huge pickup. They've been able to get some other guys out of the portal as well. What areas, what positions do you feel like are going to be a major focus this offseason as far as bringing some new guys in?
Well, I think at this point, they're about done with the transfer portal. And they brought in a good amount of players. They brought in, 3 wide receivers, Isaiah Satania, a guy from Arkansas that some SEC fans will be familiar with. He's one of the portal gets that they got from Arkansas. You got Giovanni Gibson, who had over 1,000 yards at Arkansas Pine Bluff last year. It's Pine Bluff. Will it translate? We'll see. But, there was a lot of production there last year. So they got 3 bodies at wide receiver. Derek Simmons at offensive tackle from Western Carolina, who I think a lot of people wanted. Alabama was one that offered him as well. It's really been about the offensive side. Just to get to the point here, they've added some good players on the defensive side. Marvin Jones Jr., former 5-star, was at Georgia, was at Florida State last year. He's probably the second highest rated player that they've got via the portal. But the focus was the offensive side. They had to get bodies at wide receiver with the amount of wide receivers that left. Had to get some help on the offensive line, which they did. Didn't need that much help at running back because you got a lot there. Brought in 2 quarterbacks, Cole Gonzalez from Western Carolina as well. But this class was always going to be determined by really one thing, success or failure. There was a clear line. Did you get John Mateer or not? And they did. So I think in a lot of ways, this portal class haul is a success because of that. But they need one of these other wide receivers to pop, man. I don't know if that's Satania. I don't know if that's Giovanni Gibson. But they need one of these wide receiver gets who none of these guys were considered like an Eric Singleton, right? Like that big time of a get. They're kind of, solid players. There's some upside here. Hopefully it pops. They need one of those 3 guys to have a really big year this year. And, really the big talk of the portal cycle, unfortunately for OU, is how bad tight end was last year and how underwhelming their gets have been so far at tight end in the portal. You are allowed to play at a non-Power 4 school, get in the transfer portal, and have a great career elsewhere. I think there's plenty of examples where that has been the case in the portal era. But OU's gotten 2 tight ends, one from Kennesaw State and one from Pitt State, which is in the state of Kansas. OU fans were hoping for a big splash, and they didn't get that. They didn't get really any players with a lot of production. They did get a preferred walk-on tight end as well from Louisiana. So everyone's really upset about the tight end position. I get it. I don't really know what's going on there. But at the other offensive positions, I can pitch to you ways where I would be optimistic, or, hey, I like this guy that they got in the portal. Tight end right now, it was a disaster last year, and it's just hard for me to see it right now being considerably better next year.
Yeah, interesting stuff there. Good stuff. Tyler McComas, you can hear him on The Ref out in Oklahoma. How can folks listen to you when you're on, and how can folks listen to your show?
Man, just KREF in the App Store, on from 3 to 6 every single day. And, man, we talk college football. Talk a lot of OU football. Talk a lot of SEC football. So KREF in the App Store. Or I'm also on YouTube, just my name, Tyler McComas. If you like SEC softball, that's kind of my niche on YouTube. So if you like that, I think the SEC is going to be incredible in softball this year. It has emerged as the premier conference in all of softball. I thought that was true before Oklahoma and Texas got in the league. Now it's definitely true with OU and Texas in the league. I think you could see 4 SEC teams in the top 5. So if you like college softball, that's your thing. Go subscribe on YouTube. We have a lot of fun with softball over there.
Good stuff, Tyler. Appreciate your time today. Enjoyed it. We'll talk again soon.
Anytime, man.
That is Tyler McComas with the Ref out in Oklahoma. We are Southeastern 16, covering SEC football, basketball, baseball. Subscribe, like this video, and we'll be back soon with more. I'm Chase Robinson here with Southeastern 16.